We want to welcome you to the webinar. This is for here's from Darcy Elks today from Now is the Time for Vision. And we're very pleased to have all of you with us, and we thank you for coming. This is part of the Person-Centered Planning Initiative by the Department of Health and Human Services and the Council on Developmental Disabilities, jointly funded, and we're really pleased. In addition, we are providing training that we are providing right now to supervisors, over 100, and we'll be providing to almost 500 service coordinators soon. And then we'll be conducting training for families and service providers and service recipients and people with disabilities and all of that. So I want to say for today, we're going to hear from Darcy Elks, and there are just a couple of housekeeping tidbits. One, we have Spanish translation, and if you want that, you would go down to the bottom where on your screen it says interpretation, and where you click on that, and it would bring up a separate feed for Spanish translation. Secondly, we have closed captioning, and if you're interested in that, again, your cursor down at the bottom of the screen where it says closed caption, and you click on that. Sometimes you have to click on more, and it will say to start closed captioning, and that will work and be on your screen. In addition, just for anybody who's new to Zoom, as a participant in the upper right-hand side of your screen, there's a button that's called View, and you can show different views that can be particularly helpful during the presentation. It's also a toggle button, so you can go back and forth, so you don't have to worry about getting stuck in a different platform if you want. And then finally, Darcy, towards the end, we'll take questions. So there is a Q&A box. And so if you can put into your the Q&A box any questions that you have, and there's also a chat that you can put in any technical questions that you have. So with that, I'm going to start. I've known Darcy for decades. I'm very honored and pleased to have her presenting with us. I've had the good fortune to be able to work with her for many years. She's an extraordinary presenter. Her specialty is currently working with families. She has worked for years on promoting social role valorization, the issue of people having important roles to play in the community and in their lives. Presently, she's concentrated on families specifically to help them, and she'll talk a little bit about her own voyage and journey helping her daughter and her family through the service system. Darcy's in Pennsylvania and has worked around the country and worked internationally in many countries around the world, helping people with disabilities to be more integrated and inclusive. With that, I'm going to turn you over to Darcy, and Darcy, you're on. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Mark. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is my pleasure to be here. This is a topic that I am very, very passionate about, and I hope to share some thoughts with you, some of the things I've learned as I've been for years thinking about vision that will be helpful to you. I do want to ask you, as we are going through the presentation, if thoughts occur to you about vision, it can be questions or it can be some of your experiences with vision. If you could just put them in the chat box, that would be great. And we can share some of them at the end of the presentation. So as Mark said, I have worked as a professional in a variety of different roles and have been around for a while, and actually remember when person-centered planning actually began to be a little bit more of a formalized process with Beth Mount and John O'Brien, who really were the people who put kind of a structure around it and helped all of us to think about person-centered practices and thinking. So through the years, of course, there's many different tools for person-centered planning. But, as you heard in both of the other webinars, we're really not talking about tools here. We are talking about person-centered thinking. And I think vision is a big part of person-centered thinking. I really think everybody needs a vision for themselves, for their work life, for their family life. So this is relevant for every single one of us here today. And certainly it is relevant when it comes to the context of person-centered planning. It's hard to think about person-centered planning and support without the idea of vision. As Mark mentioned, the other role I have is that I'm a mom, and I have been, as a mom, and also in my role of helping families, to many um, meetings with families and professionals and people with disabilities together. And one of the things that I've learned through the years is when vision is present and embraced, it makes a huge difference, not only in the conversations that John referred to in his presentation, but also in the actual reality of what happens, as Beth showed us in her presentations as well. It's always the time for vision, but what I would say is in this particular time of the pandemic, it's even more relevant. Vision is something that brings encouragement, strength to your soul and your spirit. So it's indeed a pleasure to offer some thoughts to you about vision. So I begin with this quote from Helen Keller. I think it's just a beautiful quote, that I would be truly blind if I did not have vision. So many times, I've seen people who are working very hard on behalf of people that they are supporting who receive supports. And they're working hard, but there's not that vision. And I've also met so many people with disabilities who haven't had the opportunity to really think about the idea of vision in their lives. And families, of course, it's the same thing. Now, when you hear, the word vision, right? Lots of times what comes to mind is great visionaries that we're all familiar with and we can all relate to, right? And these are visionaries who, in fact, embraced the idea of justice, equality, freedom. And it's interesting, these visionaries actually impacted on one another. So, Martin Luther King Jr. was heavily influenced by Mahatma Gandhi. And Mahatma Gandhi, who, of course, embraced the idea of nonviolence, was very influential in the life of the great visionary Justin Dart, who led the charge for years in advocating for the Americans with Disabilities Act. So these people might come to mind when we hear the word, a visionary. But I've learned that all of us can be visionaries. And no matter whether you're thinking about your own life or you're helping someone else to think about their life, it's really important to recognize that vision does not cost any money. So many times, when we're trying to make changes, we oftentimes hear, we don't have money for that. Well, vision does not cost any money. You can have a vision without money, right? And money should not be driving the vision. The other thing to keep in mind is vision is completely under our control. So people who are receiving supports, you can have a big vision for your life. Family members, you can have a big vision. People who are doing planning with people providing supports for people, you can have a big vision. Nobody can tell you that you can't, or tell you that you are not able to develop a vision. So when we're talking about vision in this context of, person-centered thinking and practice, a vision of what? Because, there are all kinds of visions that are out there. Years ago, there was the vision that people belonged in institutions. And so I think in the other webinars you heard, it's a vision of access to the good things in life. So having access to the kinds of things that citizens want in their lives, such as having a home, and a home that's a good fit for you, and home, not just a place to live. having opportunities to meet lots of people and develop relationships and fall in love and, get married if you want to. Traveling, if that's what you want, really being able to pursue your interests, having a good education, um, having control over your life, and making decisions about your life, directing as much as we can as human beings what happens in our life, being in valued social roles within our communities. So, being an employee in a regular place of business and having a good job that fits with your identity and leads, possibly to a career, and certainly belonging, being welcomed and belonging within, your neighborhood, within your community. So this is something, as John pointed out, in his webinar, we've been talking about for years, and some of you I know have been on this journey to try to open up possibilities to access to the good things in life for or over a period of time, maybe even decades. And so we haven't reached it yet, though. And so the vision is so important because the vision helps us to reach and to stretch. So what is vision? So I've just picked a few thoughts that I thought would be helpful for you. Jonathan Swift says, vision is the act of seeing things invisible. In other words, seeing beyond our present reality. This is another phrase that I like, using the eyes of our imagination. Andy Stanley wrote, vision is a clear mental picture of what could be, fueled by the conviction that it should be. And so I love that definition, a clear mental picture of what should be, and then the conviction that what that mental picture is should be. And I think if you think back to the visionaries I just mentioned, this would be a clear, accurate description of their idea of vision. So vision means using our imaginations and even maybe imagining something that does not yet exist. The beautiful thing about human beings, one of the beautiful things, is that we have imagination, and we can then conjure up things in our minds that right at the present are not happening or don't exist. And Webster's dictionary says, vision is the ability to perceive something that's not actually visible through mental acuteness or foresight. It is that power of imagination. So vision challenges us, no matter how we are involved in person-centered planning or thinking. It challenges us to imagine better. All the way along, in the past 50 years, we have seen visionaries who have really imagined something that was better. And actually, in Nebraska, that happened in a very forceful way when the Dr. Wolfensberger, who was a developer of normalization and then social role valorization, and Dr. Melanacino, as well as, with other people, joined together and created a very different way of providing supports to people than the institution. Now, they had to imagine that. And it was so creative. I just want you to know, Nebraska was a leader at that point in time. And it was so creative that people came from all over the world to see what you were doing in Nebraska. Now, that's quite a legacy, to live up to. And so a couple of other quotes. You can tell I really like quotes. I think they can be really helpful. The first one really has to do with a change in mindset. So Marcel Proust says, vision, the real voyage of discovery, consists of not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. So you do not necessarily have to go to other places. You can stay put and have a shift in your mindset and have a new perspective that opens up your thinking, and then leads to, vision of something very different. I know when I first started working in services, I had a particular way of looking at things. I had a particular mindset. And that mindset got very powerfully challenged by colleagues and by many teachers I've had along the way that helped me to open up to see a completely different perspective. And to really, I would say my eyes were opened and I began to embrace a vision of full inclusion for all people. Of course, the very famous quotation from George Bernard Shaw says, "Some men see things as they are and say, why? I dream things that never were, and say, why not?" And I was thinking about some of the best conversations that I've seen where people are sitting together and thinking about vision with someone have been where people are asking the questions, why not? Why not this? Why not that? Why couldn't this happen? So I think this is a challenge to all of us because we can tend to kind of get stuck in the way things are. So to really challenge ourselves, to dream things. And of course, creating begins with vision by a very famous painter, Matisse. And so if we're going to create something different, right, that begins with vision. If we're going to create full, meaningful, inclusive life for ourselves and assist others to have access to that, to a full, meaningful, inclusive life, that creation begins with a vision. So this is my daughter, and I have been given permission by my daughter to use some of her slides that she uses in her presentations. When this is what Mary said the first day after she got home from university. She said, "Mom, this is the life. This is the life." So she decided to name her presentation that. And I just wanted to introduce you to her because Mary has been such a teacher to me through the years and helped me to really understand the importance and the power of vision. So this is Mary when she was very brand new, maybe 3 days old. My husband, Martin, and I are adoringly looking at her as you do with new babies. And we were just over the moon about having our first child. And I remember that day as clearly as it happened yesterday. As I was looking at Mary, I was thinking all these things that I wouldn't have called a vision at that point, but I guess they were. I was thinking, I hope she has a great life. I hope she gets a good education. I hope she finds something she really loves and she's able to pursue it. I hope that she's able to travel if she wants to do that. I hope she has lots of friends. I hope that she finds a life partner. All those things that, you as a parent, it's instinct, I think, that you start to dream right at that point. And I realized that was the beginning of vision for us as a family. Now, I wouldn't have called it a vision at the time, but those thoughts through the years really helped to guide us. And we had a number of people along the way who, friends, family, neighbors, as well as people who worked in the system who helped us to develop that vision. And of course, now Mary is 28, and for quite a while, she's actually had her own vision, as happens as kids grow up. Okay, so I thought these metaphors were also really helpful when we think about vision. And you can relate this to, your role. So if you're thinking about your own life, if you are a family member and you're assisting your family member to think about his or her life, or you're a worker, these metaphors are very relevant, I think. So first of all, and this is pretty common, we hear this in a lot of person-centered planning meetings, people talk about the North Star. So the vision gives you the destination. It helps you to know where you're headed. And so certainly for us as a family and for my daughter, that was very relevant, that early on, the first few days of her life, we had a sense of that North Star. Secondly, a metaphor for vision is that of being a compass for the journey. So, of course, we all know that as you go through life, there are many different decisions that you have to make. And we found that as a family, it was very helpful to have the vision in place as a compass. So when Mary was in school, for example, and one of the teachers would suggest something to us, we'd say, okay, thank you for the suggestion. Now we're going to think about it in relationship to Mary's vision. And we would always look and say, if we did what was just suggested to us, would it assist Mary to move toward her destination, or might it take her away from the destination? So it's a very helpful tool, vision, to help make decisions. Thirdly would be telescope. So we think about the metaphor of using a telescope to see far away and continuing to sharpen the focus. And so we sometimes, when things would occur in Mary's life, we would be a little fuzzy about, well, is that really going to be helpful or not? And we found that, using the telescope of vision, we could gradually get a sharp image and, an image of what that would be in the future. And lastly would be, it's an anchor for turbulent times. And so I think this is true for every single one of us. You could relate these metaphors to your own life. I know that, in my daughter's life, there were some very hard periods, as there are in everybody's life, and I'm sure there will be more to come. And I particularly remember one with school. It was a very difficult time with school. Mary was at this point in grade 9. And my husband and I have advocated for years, and we had done everything we knew how to do, and we weren't getting anywhere. And it was very distressing. And so we decided, let's go back to the vision. We will ultimately be able to figure school out, but right now, school is not going all that well. Is there another part of the vision where we could focus and things could move forward? And that's when Mary got her first job. Okay, so where does vision come from? It really comes from beliefs and values and mindsets. So the kinds of beliefs that we would expect, that if you were involved in person-centered practice and thinking, you would be holding to. So that, inclusive societies are richer, fuller, more vibrant, strong communities. That all people belong in the community, that all people have gifts and talents, that all people have potential, that people who are, people with disabilities and all people actually within the society should be offered the opportunities to have access to the good things in life. So those are foundational kinds of beliefs and values that give birth to vision. Of course, as well, passion. So, great visionaries throughout the years, we can read stories about their passion, which propelled them forward, concern and conviction. And I think about some of the people that I know in Nebraska. I've had quite a bit of opportunity to work there in the past years. And one woman who, she's not famous, and she is one of the strongest people I know. She lives with a disability herself, and she has such a beautiful vision for not only people with disabilities, but for her child, for the school that her child goes to, for the whole community, that she's part of. And such great conviction. You don't spend too much time talking to this friend of mine without knowing about her convictions. And certainly we need to learn from one another. I will say, both as a professional and as a parent, a lot of my learning and understanding about many things, but vision in particular, has come from being with people with disabilities, being with families, and being with other professionals who are a little bit further along in the path, the journey than I was. And that sitting together, listening to one another, sharing stories is just so critical and so important in terms of developing vision. So vision comes, from our hearts, our souls, and our minds. So this is not something that can be rushed, right? It develops in you, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Now, the power of vision. Let's think a little bit about the power of vision. Well, it's a very, motivating force. It is the compelling impetus, behind what we do. Through the years, I think all of us in our lives, and as well, in our work lives, we can point to times that have been really disappointing and discouraging. But if we have that vision, it motivates us to keep going. Secondly, this is an interesting thought, that vision is the deep burning yes that helps us to say no. What do I mean by that? In other words, when we have a deep vision and we're really committed, to that vision, and someone comes along with something that's very different, it helps us to say no. So I'm thinking about the early days of deinstitutionalization when the community system was just being developed. And of course, and even today we're finding this, still institutions were being promoted. But there were such strong advocates who had the deep vision that inside them, they could not say yes to any of those institutional options. They said, no, we're going to figure it out. We may not exactly know what to do, but we're going to figure it out. And families, I would say, I know lots of families that has been what they've done all the way along. And vision is, as I've said, really the power of it is really empowering. And if you have had the opportunity to hear people who really have a vision for themselves and share that vision with other people, especially people who have been marginalized and, have a very different idea about their lives, it is so encouraging and uplifting. All right, so a few other thoughts here on the power of vision. So vision really affects the choices that we make. Now, this is an interesting one to think about, that if our vision is limited, we tend to make choices on what is in front of us. So I have seen this, so many times where people are thinking in a kind of limited way. Well, this is all, I'm thinking of a lot of the families that I've met through the years. This is all that's available to us. So we're not really happy with this kind of support for our family member, but we're going to choose it because that is, what's available. So you may have to choose that option because there are no current other options. But if you don't have that vision, are you going to create something new? Probably not. You just kind of, settle for what is. And sometimes, actually, when you speak the vision, it really encourages people and things get developed, that never were. Secondly, here on the power of vision, and this is drawn from the work of Stephen Covey. If our vision is based on the social mirror, okay, then we tend to make choices based on the expectations within our society or the scripts that were given by our society. So I'm just going to list a few to remind you of them. So the stereotypes that swirl around people who are devalued by our society. So people with disabilities being seen as children who could never grow up, as a burden, as a lifelong dependent client. The low negative expectations that are put upon people. And then, translate into options that are not very challenging and that, really don't help people to grow and develop. The social mirror that we still are dealing with is that people are better off, quote, with their own kind. I mean, we as a family, Mary has always been fully included, and I can't tell you the number of times, and even fairly recently, people who are really well-meaning would come up to me and say, are you sure she wouldn't be happier with her own kind, or with people who are like her? And it's interesting. I usually say, well, what do you mean by that? Do you mean people who love hip hop? Do you mean people who love theater? Do you mean people who love to dance? They look at me kind of strangely because, of course, that isn't really what they mean. Anyway, that's one of the social mirrors, and that leads then, if we embrace that, to a vision or to action of putting people apart in a way. Or another social script that we get is, that people really with disabilities are really not capable of making decisions and, saying what they want for their own life and so forth. And so there's much more I could say in this, but I think that you have enough experience to know, right? What are those social scripts that we get given? And I'm telling you, they can be really convincing. And none of us is immune to this, okay? So people with disabilities are not immune to this. The imposition of these social scripts, families are certainly not immune to it. And definitely workers are not immune to it either. It's part of the society that we live in. And so if our vision is based on those social scripts, the life is going to be pretty small and possibly even quite negative. So vision will help us to challenge the status quo, the kinds of things that I just mentioned, and we'll really work to stretch our thinking and our practice. Really help us to keep growing, which is a wonderful part of being a human being. We continue to grow, learn new ideas, open up our thinking, change our mindsets, and create, beautiful things. Okay, so I wanted to just talk a little bit here about the idea of, in terms of a vision, helping us to stay on track or helping us to think about a trajectory and then having a higher likelihood of staying on track. And I have drawn a couple of visuals here from the Life Course framework. And this has been developed by Shelley Reynolds at the University of Missouri. And you will get an opportunity to meet Shelley. I believe she's doing a webinar for you as well. So there are many different person-centered planning tools. This is one that, includes, they all basically include, the vision and emphasize the vision. This is just a nice visual. So I thought you might enjoy seeing this. So when you're thinking about the little icons at the top, I'll just note those are representing people of different ages, making the point that vision is relevant for all people of every age. And then you'll see, obviously, starting with the vision for a good life. And so that's where people can brainstorm ideas that they come up with, that, other people help them come up with, and so forth. Now, equally important is the box underneath that says what I don't want. And I've learned that it is just as important to give voice to what you don't want as what you do want. And of course, they're very interrelated. And then the arrow, the black solid arrow, indicating that once you have a vision, you can actually think about what are the kinds of experiences that I want that would really help me to move toward my vision. And of course, it's not always a straight line, right? None of us in life have a straight trajectory. There are times that we start one thing, we realize that's not a good fit for us, and then we go off and we try something else, and then we may, develop another trajectory. So I wouldn't want to give you the idea that everything is just nice and neat and goes in order. Lots of times you fall off. And try new things. And thank goodness, that really keeps life interesting. So this is not something that you write down your vision and it's like this for the rest of your life. As well, you see in the bottom, there's the dotted line with the arrow leading to what I don't want. And that is an interesting exercise for people to think about what kinds of experiences do I want to avoid that would lead me to what I don't want. And so it's a visual that you could keep in your mind. And this life course does include one of these, ideas of the visioning for a person who's thinking about his or her life with other people, and also one for the family. And it's been very interesting when a person fills out or, thinks about this and then puts some ideas there and then shares, and the family does it, and then they share with one another. And so sometimes there's some very different ideas, and it creates a lot of very good conversation. So just to share a little bit with you around the idea of the trajectory and how it helped us as a family to really assist Mary as she moved forward in life. So I was trained as a teacher. And so right away, when she was brand new, I was working to help her learn things. So there's her first reading, her first book, of course, and then it became time for school. So how did we find a school? The vision was that she'd be included fully in a regular school. We went to our neighbors. We said, okay, tell us, what are the best preschools around? And that's how we ended up at this wonderful Montessori school where Mary was the first student with a developmental disability to be included. This is a school that took graduation really seriously. So you can see the kindergarten graduation. And the trajectory. Okay, so the next step, of course, what is it? It's elementary school. And our big vision for education was a good education in a regular school with typical peers. So Mary would have lots of role models. And of course, then high school, which I could talk a lot about that, and then graduation, which was very exciting. And the high school Mary went to was a charter school, and they had a charter for inclusive post-secondary education for all of the kids. Mary, again, was the only student who was there with a disability, developmental disability. But because Mary had been taken on field trips to all kinds of universities and colleges and technical schools, and her friends were all going to college, when we got together for the plan for her future, and she was asked, what did she want to do? She said, go to university. Now, Mary is 28, so this was quite a while ago, right? That was 13 years ago. And in our area, we did not have any of the inclusive post-secondary initiatives that we now have in Pennsylvania. So I really want to encourage you to work on this in Nebraska. We were able to work with the university, and Mary actually attended as a non-matriculated student for 4 years. We got the school district to pay part of the tuition. And so it was the most exciting, energizing education Mary has ever had, and maybe ever will have. I don't know. So there she is at Westchester. So that was her education, so the trajectory. And now that she has been out of school for a while. She does attend courses more for recreation and leisure, and she has had to attend some classes for work. So leisure life, right? You know how when somebody indicates an interest in something, you usually, when you have a child, you usually sign up for a class. So Mary loved dancing. There she is, her first dance. This is middle school. And she danced into her early 20s. So this is a wonderful opportunity for her to be in valuable roles, meet lots of people who she had something in common with, and so develop relationships. And of course, in university, this is pretty exciting. On her 21st birthday, going out for a drink with friends and celebrating. And now, doing all kinds of things. Mary loves to go to the beach, and she loves to go out, still loves to go out dancing. And here she is with a friend who is trying to teach her how to surf. And what about work life? So because we had the vision that Mary would work, but we weren't sure exactly what she would work in, we started out, you think again of that trajectory. Of course, when she was a young child, she was, helping around the house, doing chores. In high school, she had several volunteer jobs, and this was one of them. And then this was Mary's first job, working at this wonderful little neighborhood DVD rental shop, which unfortunately went out of business with all of the technology that's available these days. But this was when she earned her first paycheck, and that set a tone for her. And by now, of course, Mary has her own ideas about what she wants. So she said, I think I'd like to work with children. So she got a summer job working in a Montessori school. At the end of that summer, she said, I do not want to work with young children. And of course, that's part of life, right? Experiencing things, figuring out what you like. She loves retail, so she's worked in a number of different retail settings. This was a place that actually she learned how to make green products for the body and the home, so things like soaps. And the production of them, the arranging of them, the packing of them, labeling of them, and sending them off. So she now has had a job at Marshall's for a couple of years. She really enjoys unpacking things and working in the store. She does a variety of things in the store. She's very well known by the other employees and really, fully accepted. Now, we were trying to help her, though, continuing on with that vision. It's always been part of the vision that Mary could develop some kind of a career. And so keeping in line with that and working with a supported employment agency and getting support from our supports coordinator, Mary actually, there she is at Marshall, sorry. There. Now, and this was another job she had, speaking and presenting. I told you she does that. So we went back to the drawing board with Mary and said, okay, what would you really love to do? And she said, I love theater. And Mary does love theater. So we looked back, she in high school, she'd taken some classes at our local theater. Again, thinking about the trajectory. She'd become a volunteer usher at the local theater. When she went to university, she focused her studies on theater and acting and so forth. She had an internship when she was at university in theater. And so it seemed like a logical jump, right? That working in theater, and that was the vision, that was the dream then that came forward as we sat down and discussed and thought with Mary, about her future. And she did get a job at the local theater where she is a head usher. And unfortunately, she had just mastered the job and the pandemic hit. So it'll be quite a while before she goes back, but she is assured of a place. So vision helps you to stay on track and at least think about a trajectory, and is kind of like a target to aim for. Vision also helps us to come together and move forward. So I love this quote from Stephen Covey. The passion of shared vision empowers people to transcend the negative interactions that consume so much time and deplete time and effort, and deplete the quality of life. So honestly, I, as a professional, have been involved in lots of those conversations where you leave feeling very defeated and negative. And so vision keeps us focused on the positive. Okay, so I think we're almost out of time, but I want to say this. I want to leave you with this thought. It is so important. Remember that if there's no clear stated vision, there's a big void, okay? And others will jump in to fill that void with what they think the vision should be. And that vision that people jump in with may not be what a person or a family wants. I can just tell you that in our experience and Mary's experience with this was when we went to that meeting and she said, I want to go to university. The people who were from the school said, well, that's not what we have in mind for you. We think that what you should do is, go to your graduation ceremony, then come back to school and continue to study reading and math. Now, that's something that Mary had been doing for years, 12 years. And she looked at them and she said, no, I'm going to university. And of course, we supported her. And I've always remembered that experience. If Mary had not had a vision, her trajectory would have been quite different. So I'll just end with, now's the time for vision. I hope you're encouraged, and I'm just wondering if there are any questions that people have.
Darcy, I want to thank you. We'd like to take questions in the Q&A or the chat, either the Q&A preferably. And Darcy, I have a little bit of time to answer them. These are really questions about the notion of vision and how vision can drive people's improvement in life, drive us forward, drive us in Nebraska to implement services and help that people need and want, and maybe at the moment aren't available readily through the waiver and the current services that exist. So we'll take a few moments to solicit questions that people might have around the whole notion of presentation of vision, and some of the other things that Darcy's doing in other parts of the country and also internationally. So we'll host for a moment.
We have a question from Amy Peterson. How do you, your daughter, and case manager address the balancing of income to be able to keep Social Security and the waiver benefits?
Well, we're very fortunate in that we have a very good supported employment agency that supports Mary, and they have a person who actually advises us on this. So you can actually earn more money than you might think. There are rules about it. And they're all written down, and a benefits advisor can really give you very good information on that. But Mary is still eligible for Social Security disability. And if she goes over, you have to pay some back. Every month you have to report, right? So it's definitely manageable. And what we really have found, and what I've found also in walking with other people, is that actually if you have a job, you are in a much better position than being completely dependent on benefits. Because should those benefits be decreased or even go away for some reason, at least you have some income. So I would say that, for any people who with disabilities who are on waiver funding and want to work, get a benefits specialist who will give you advice about that, and families as well.
Okay, we have more questions coming in. How is her vision currently driving her life and employment? Does she work with DD services, and how is it implemented in her plan?
So We actually have a pretty good arrangement. What we have a supports coordinator, and the supports coordinator, I always ask the supports coordinator, to come and spend a little time with us in conversation so we get comfortable with one another. And during that time, Mary does have a written vision, which I just want to stress. It's really important. Families, people with disabilities, write the vision down. It just is very helpful to have it written, for you to write it as well as for other people to be able to see it. So Mary can talk about her vision. She can show it to her supports coordinator. And then the supports coordinator takes the vision and develops the goals with us and Mary, that she puts in the plan, that will qualify, meet the qualifications for Mary to continue to get waiver funding. And I think, we have a pretty good partnership. The supports coordinator is actually, very humble, really has learned a lot, I think, from Mary, and has really been inspired by her. And so that's the way we work together. Yes. So, and we're doing self-directed funding. So the funding goes to an agency, but then we actually have control over it all.
Thank you, Darcy. We also have 3 questions revolving around education. I'll read them and you can pick. How do you get the school districts in Nebraska to talk about vision, as they are the ones most involved from birth to age 21? How do you get Nebraska service coordinators to talk about vision? And the last thought was, what are your thoughts of person-centered planning to be part of the student's IEP, which usually is educational goal oriented?
Okay, so start with the last one. Well, we always had a stated vision as a family, and it was written down. And when we started the school year, we would go in with that vision. We wanted everybody to read it. And we wanted the goals then for Mary's education to flow from that vision. And so that was very helpful. And we got a lot of feedback. And as Mary has become an adult, and she shares her vision with people because she is in control of it now, right? She shares it with whoever she wants to. We've gotten the same feedback that it's so helpful to actually know what you're thinking, what the vision is. We were able to, not everybody came on board, obviously, but we were able to help people to come on board much more easily than if they were trying to guess what's our vision, or if they had just a big broad sweep, inclusive education. We really tried to write it down, make it personal so people could relate to it, understand it. And that is the way I think you weave it into the IEP, you weave it into the ISP as well. Or even maybe weave is the wrong word. It actually directs what goes into the IEP and the ISP. How do you get schools to talk about this? I think you need some people on the inside who will really help them to think about it. And you find those allies, in teachers and principals. And we found them all the way along, by the way. We've had lots of the negative, we've had lots of the positive. That, when presented with the vision of full inclusive education, they, came on board. So I think, students need to challenge, parents need to challenge. We need to find the allies inside and encourage them. And actually in Nebraska, there is a project that Disability Rights Nebraska is hosting, where families are teaching other families to be advocates. And so they are having a great deal of success in terms of opening up some of the thinking in the schools, but it takes a long time. Hello?
I'm here. The last question is a statement and a short question. Your words were so powerful. Thank you. How can we help encourage families to create their vision? So often we as providers are providing visions as there is no vision in place.
Right. Oh, and so that brings me back to actually, thank you for reminding me of the previous, there was a question about how do we get supports coordinators to, think about vision. So I think, it is really important for families to encourage families when it comes to vision, for people with disabilities to, in fact, encourage families to open up to vision. And the best way I know for that to happen is for people to come together, as was said in both of the other webinars, sit together, talk together, share stories, and share visions. I think that's what really helps people to, to move forward and to think about vision. And I really want to say to those of you who work as a supports coordinator, it's a really hard job. And I know you have like so much paperwork to do. I just want to encourage you, if you can carve the time to sit with people and think about vision, not you telling people what their vision is, listening, suggesting, with family, with other people, it will be so life-giving and nurturing to you. And I'm speaking as a professional when I say that.
Thank you so much, Darcy. That was just a startling, mesmerizing presentation and putting a vision so much in the forefront in concrete ways. We've talked again and again about person-centered planning and needing a vision, but you've really put it forth in ways that people can really appreciate in really specific manners and sharing your family life. So thank you for that.
There's one quote I forgot to say, and that is from the Old Testament that says, "Without a vision, the people perish."
So thanks. So let me just close us out in the 2 minutes we got left. The future webinars, the next one is by Daniela Najoli on Born to Live with Community. And she'll be talking all about community. When people we support become members and citizens lean in. She's from Ohio and works as a community builder with the Starfire Council in Ohio, and she will be quite terrific. In the chat box is the website to register. You registered for here, but you can register. You'll see a bigger description, and you'll also see the biography of Daniela. She's quite extraordinary, and I can't encourage you enough to come. A couple of other things. There's a survey link for the webinars. We would appreciate if you'd go there. That helps us see where we can improve, anything that we need to be thinking about or doing. So we'd appreciate if you click on that. It's only 5 questions. It'll just take you a few moments. There's the link for the person-centered website from the department that has the future webinars that are being presented and where you can register. In addition, there are all of these sessions are recorded, and if you missed that or want to share that, this one, all the other 2 last ones that we've done with John O'Brien and Beth Mount are up, and this one will be up in a week or so. We encourage you to both invite the people that you're with, the friends that you have, the other family members, the people that you serve, to come and be part of the webinars. We have 11 of them we're doing. We have another 8 that we'll be doing, and also you can share the recordings with people. With that, we simply want to thank you, Darcy, for just fabulous, awesome presentation. We want to thank you all for coming and being with us, and we hope to see you in the next round. Bye-bye, everybody.